Let's come back to you. And Bernie Sanders, let's go to the United States and what's going on with arming Israel.
Well, Bernie Sanders, as many know, is a Jewish U.S. senator. He was Democratic. He went independent. And it kind of goes in tandem with what you're saying just now, Mike, about Zionism. Not all Jewish politicians agree with Israel's war policies, and Bernie is very outspoken. One thing you can depend on with Bernie, you don't have to agree with him, but you are always getting his honest opinion. He's always straight up about what he believes. Excuse me. Anyway, here's a news clip from his own official Senate website, News. Sanders' statement on voting no on $110.5 billion emergency foreign aid supplemental bill. Of that $110.5 billion, about $10 billion or a little more would be earmarked for Israel. But going on, December 6th, this is dated, after voting against the $110.5 billion emergency foreign aid supplemental bill that came before the Senate recently, Sanders, an independent from Vermont, released the following statement. I voted no on the foreign aid supplemental bill today for one reason. I do not believe that we should give the right-wing extremist Netanyahu government an additional $10.1 billion with no strings attached to continue their inhumane war against the Palestinian people. Israel does have the absolute right to defend itself against the Hamas terrorists who attacked them October 7. They do not have the legal or moral right to kill thousands of innocent Palestinian men, women, and children. So this is a Jewish U.S. senator making his views known very boldly. If he was a Republican, I think he'd have a tougher time. Anyway, I believe we have a video clip that supplements what I just read.
Secondly, at a time when Congress will likely soon pass a $900 billion defense bill, this supplemental bill includes tens of billions that should be covered as part of the base defense budget and handled through normal appropriations, not allocated as emergency spending. We can save tens of billions of dollars in this bill and dedicate that money to some of the horrendous domestic crises that we face. Thirdly, and maybe most importantly, Madam President, at a time when some 16,000 Palestinians have been killed in the last 2 months, 2/3 of whom are women and children, and tens of thousands more have been injured. At a time when 1.8 million people, Palestinians, have been displaced from their homes and are struggling every day, have been thrown out of their homes. They don't know where they're going. They are struggling to get food and water and medical supplies and fuel just to survive. And I want you to think about what's going on with the children, a lot of children in that country. What is going on psychically, them looking up in the sky, is a bomb going to fall? Where am I spending the night? How do I get food? That's what's going on there right now. And Madam President, at a time when over 250 people have been killed in the West Bank, I'm not talking about Gaza, I'm talking about the West Bank, since October 7th, and more than 1,000 Palestinians have been driven off of their land in the West Bank. No, in the midst of all of that, I do not believe we should be appropriating over $10 billion for the right-wing extremist Netanyahu government to continue its current military approach.
Mark, before you go on, I just want to make the point, in the original statement Sanders said that Israel, he maintains Israel's right to defend itself. Well, we'll be talking a little bit more about that when we come on to the Security Council in a minute, but as an occupying power, of course, they don't.
Yeah, that's a notable point, Mike. I mean, as a general sense, any nation state has the right to defend itself, but it's a special circumstance there. And I've known people that have spent time there over the years. And you're right to point that out. And it's also notable here in this next slide, the Senate Republicans ended up blocking the very legislation that the Jewish Senator Bernie Sanders was talking about. This is an AP dispatch. Senate Republicans block the Ukraine and Israeli aid as they demand border policy changes. The Republicans want a lot more from the Biden administration to protect the U.S. southern border. And so there's a lot of horse trading and jarring going on, a lot of infighting, but a very notable thing there. So maybe Sanders did have some influence in slowing down that juggernaut at the very least. And some other fallout from all of this. Speaking of Zionism, we have a gadfly in the U.S. House. That's Thomas Massie of Kentucky, a very respectable congressman in many respects. And here's a NBC News headline that I put in here. White House calls Representative Thomas Massie's X post, that is Twitter, virulent antisemitism, urges House GOP leadership to condemn him. And this is his Twitter post. American patriotism. It shows a figure kind of shunning away from it. But Zionism, well, then that person shown in the Twitter post is all comfortable and all well with that. And this set off a paroxysm of fury, showing how sensitive this is. But meanwhile, there's some more back channel things going on. This is a New York Times post that was published in a Seattle newspaper. State Department bypasses Congress. Get that, bypasses Congress to approve Israel's order for tank ammo. We have a little bit more detail on that. Washington, the State Department is pushing through a government sale to Israel of 13,000 rounds of tank ammo, bypassing a congressional review process that is generally required for arms sales to foreign nations. The State Department notified congressional committees at 11 p.m. Friday. I believe that was a week ago this past Friday, or it may have been this past Friday, that it was moving ahead with the sale valued at more than $106 million, even though Congress had not finished an informal review of a larger order from Israel for tank rounds. So there's a larger order waiting in the wings. The department invoked an emergency provision in the Arms Export Control Act, the State Department official and a congressional official told the New York Times, both speaking on condition of anonymity. There's the Times again, always using anonymous sources. We have a little bit more about Mr. Blinken. The Defense Department posted a notification on the sale before noon Saturday. It said Secretary of State Anthony Blinken had informed Congress on Friday that an emergency exists that requires the immediate sale. It's the first time the State Department had invoked the emergency provision for an arms shipment to the Middle East since May of 2019, back when Secretary of State Mike Pompeo approved weapons sales back then to Saudi Arabia and the UAE, a move that some lawmakers criticized. The State Department has used this emergency provision at least 2 times since 2022 to rush arms to Ukraine for its defense against Russia's invasion. And I think that pretty much sums it up. But yes, we have this back channeling going on, even though the bill that Sanders spoke on has been at least delayed. Back to you guys.
Can I just say that, Mark, that 13,000 rounds for the tanks, but the tanks aren't fighting other tanks or armored vehicles. So those rounds are going to be used for destroying civilian infrastructure inside Gaza. So it follows on from the thousands of tons of American, possibly British bombs. But this is all designed to conduct warfare inside the civilian areas.